Sometimes in the middle of a crowded day we meet someone who speaks with so much confidence that we start doubting our own steps, a coworker who swears that success belongs to a certain kind of person, a friend who insists that people born under one star are blessed and people born under another are cursed. And even though we know life is far more complicated, a part of us still wonders, what if they're right? What if destiny is tied to something as small as a birthday, a label, a category? It is in moments like these, when we are tired, when we are searching for meaning, when the world feels like it's handing out praise and blame unevenly, that old stories quietly return, not to entertain us but to steady us. This story begins during a simple visit in a small town where an elderly man approached the Thingazar Sayadaw with a warm, admiring smile. His admiration, as gentle as it seemed, carried a subtle illusion, one we all fall for at times. He said he had listened to a sermon the night before and found it just as excellent as the teachings of the revered Abbot Sayadaw, and then almost proudly he revealed the connection he believed he had. Uncovered both teachers, he discovered, were Sunday-borns, and so clearly Sunday-borns must be destined for greatness. The Thingazar Sayadaw listened quietly to this conclusion. Inside his silence was a hint of discomfort, the kind that comes when praise is wrapped in misunderstanding. He smiled, not a pleased smile, but a patient one, and gently replied, "Layman, let me tell you about a great abbot who was not born on a Sunday but on a Saturday." And so, with a steady breath, he began. In the golden city of Ava, bright with temples and crowned with the calm weight of tradition, there lived an abbot whose reputation shimmered across the land. He was not merely respected, he was sought after. Kings, high officials, monks from distant monasteries, all came to sit beneath his teachings. Many of the abbots who later walked the city's grand monasteries had once been his pupils. His voice carried both wisdom and clarity. His mind was sharp, his discipline unwavering. To the world he looked complete, like a mountain that needed no further shaping. And yet beneath the polished surface, two small cracks remained. He was quick to anger, and he carried a quiet pride, but in the simple fact that he had been born on a Saturday. It was a strange thing to hold so tightly, yet he held it all the same. One day, the Queen announced a great alms-giving ceremony. Monks from many monasteries were invited, but the abbot's presence was honored above all. After the monks had eaten, after the abbot had finished his sermon, the royal couple remained seated beside their ministers and judges, waiting for the palanquins to arrive. In that gentle pause, the abbot turned to the priest and spoke words that revealed the pride he had long carried. "Your Majesty can hold this great ceremony because you are a great queen," he said, "and your Majesty is a great queen because you were born on a Saturday." The king, too, was a Saturday-born, so were several ministers, so were many judges, and as each added their voice, the abbot's satisfaction swelled. "We Saturday-borns," he declared, "always achieve greatness in various fields. You have become king and queen, ministers and judges, and I have become a great abbot." The courtyard was still, the royal robes unmoving in the air. Pride, subtle and warm, seemed to settle over the gathering like dust in sunlight, unnoticed but everywhere. It was then that a quiet listener heard these words and held them closely. A Saturday-born beggar. While the royal hall glowed with silk and gold, the courtyard just beyond it held a quieter world. There, among worn robes and tired faces, beggars waited patiently for the alms food left after the monk's meal. Their place was always at the edge, close enough to see, far enough not to be seen. Among them stood a man who had learned to listen more than he spoke. Life had softened his voice but sharpened his ears. When the abbot praised the greatness of Saturday-borns, the beggar leaned forward, not out of envy, but out of simple curiosity. The words drifted across the courtyard like incense smoke, reaching even those who were never meant to be included in such praise. He heard the abbot's proud declaration. He heard the ministers echoing it. He watched the gentle nods of agreement from people whose lives seemed painted in bright colors while his own was a muted shade. Still he listened with quiet interest. When the palanquins finally arrived, one after another, with their carved wooden frames and soft cushions, the courtyard stirred. The monks began to take their leave, guided respectfully toward their rides. The abbot, draped in dignity and confidence, stepped forward to enter his palanquin. And that was when the beggar felt a small movement inside him, something like a question, something like a hope, perhaps even a whisper of belonging. He took a few steps forward, just close enough to be heard, but not enough to intrude. "My lord," he said softly, "I am also a Saturday-born." The moment held its breath. The abbot paused with one foot inside the palanquin. His robe, caught in a moment of stillness, seemed to sway between patience and irritation. He turned sharply toward the voice, and his eyes hardened, not with curiosity, but with immediate displeasure. The beggar's words, simple and honest, had touched something the abbot had built his pride upon. For a heartbeat, the courtyard felt cold. The abbot looked the man up and down, the torn cloth, the dusty skin, the life of wandering etched into every fold of his presence, and then with a voice edged by anger he answered, "We were born on royal Saturdays, golden Saturdays, glorious Saturdays," he said. "But you—" His finger lifted slightly, almost as though pointing at a stain. "You were born on a begging Saturday, a tramping Saturday, a good-for-nothing Saturday." The words did not strike loudly. Instead, they fell with a quiet heaviness, like stones gently placed in someone's hands, one after another. In that moment, the courtyard did not move. Even the shadows seemed to hold their breath. The beggar did not argue. He did not bow. He simply received the words as people at the margins often do, and let them rest inside him. The abbot turned away, stepped fully into the palanquin, and the carriers lifted him with practiced grace. The procession moved, leaving behind the dust, the silence, and a man who had only spoken truth and been punished for it. The story, however, was far from over. The Sayadaw, in telling it, had only begun to reveal its weight. When the Thingazar Sayadaw reached this part of the story, the room around him grew still. The elderly admirer who had praised Sunday-borns sat listening, unaware that the lesson was unfolding gently around him, like a net cast without force. In the Sayadaw's calm telling, there was no need for raised voices or harsh correction. He simply let the truth settle, truth carried not in argument, but in example. He described how the abbot, so revered and learned, had allowed pride to cling to him like a shadow he no longer noticed. A man praised by kings, followed by scholars, respected by every corner of the land, yet moved by a thought no larger than a birthday. The listeners could almost see it. The grand abbot rising above every monastery and yet stumbling over a belief so small. The Sayadaw did not rush. He let each detail breathe, let the contrast reveal itself. The royal court, filled with Saturday-borns wrapped in silk and achievement, and the lone beggar, Saturday-born as well, wrapped in nothing but simplicity. The room absorbed the quiet weight of this comparison, a reminder that the same sun rises on every roof, bright or broken. And in the Sayadaw's soft voice the story moved on. The Thingazar Sayadaw allowed the final moment to linger. The abbot, stepping into his palanquin, carried away by attendants, upheld by status, yet lowered by his own words, and the beggar left standing in the courtyard, untouched by privilege but untouched too by the abbot's anger. Then the Sayadaw returned his gaze to the admirer who had praised him earlier. There was no scolding, no lecture, only the story he had chosen. A story that revealed without ever saying it plainly how easily praise can mislead us, how quickly pride grows when fed by labels, how quietly wisdom fades when one begins to separate greatness from humility. The lesson did not strike like a drum. It arrived like a slow breath, soft, steady, undeniable. The Sayadaw had offered the man a mirror, not a rebuke. And through the abbot of Ava, he gently showed that birthdays, birthplaces, titles, and categories do not make a person noble. It is the heart that does, and the heart can be clouded in both a palace and a monastery. The story ended there, not with judgment but with quiet clarity, like a lamp whose flame steadies after being shaken. If this story rested somewhere in you, if it made you pause even for a moment, let that pause be a small shelter you can return to, a reminder that worth is not inherited through labels, nor diminished by circumstance. Greatness is not tied to the day of our birth, but to the depth of our humility, the steadiness of our mind, and the gentleness in our speech. If these quiet journeys bring you calm in a noisy world, you are welcome to stay close. Let this be a place where stories guide you back to yourself. If you wish, you may subscribe, or leave a comment about the part that stayed with you. Not as an obligation, only as a way of saying, I am here, walking this path too. And if you choose to share this story, may it reach someone who needs a softer moment today.